tens of millions of Americans. The ex-girlfriend of African-American pro golfer Tiger Woods is dropping a massive $30 million lawsuit against his estate. Erica Herman filed a lawsuit last year alleging Woods violated the Landlord-Tenant Act by tricking her into vacating their shared home when they split. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
Baldwin Park is where we're seeing a busy drive on that 65 South approaching the 10. Two left lanes are taken up with a crash. Looks like we're loaded up here from Live Oak Road. At Gardena, it's a wreck trying to clear on the 91 West approaching the 110. That has slowed the drive from at least Bellflower Boulevard. Long Beach and 710 North approaching Delamo Boulevard. Left lane blocked to the crash. Stay to the right there. Culver City on that 405 North approaching Washington Boulevard. Culver. Earlier wreck sitting on the right side. Leaving LAX, the busy drive as far back as Century.
Prime members save more at your Amazon Fresh store. As a Prime member, you'll save 10% on hundreds of items in store, from organic produce to pantry staples to handcrafted pizza. Head to Amazon.com/fresh locations and find a store near you.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Philadelphia 76ers general manager Daryl Morey confirmed that James Harden really does want to be traded. Harden is asking Morey to do a deal that sends him to the Clippers. At the moment, there is no other team the seven-time All-Star wants to play for if he can get out of Philly. Morey admitted he's trying to work something out for Harden and the Clippers, but only at the right price. He said he won't trade Harden to the Clippers or any other team unless the trade keeps the Sixers in contention for a title. Kawhi Leonard and Paul George are off limits, plus the Clippers don't have any first-round draft picks until 2027. If the Clippers can put something on the table that impresses Morey, Harden will be in the Clippers uniform next season. The Dodgers keep rolling. They win by 7 in Baltimore, a 3-run homer for Jason Hayward. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
2 years ago, on Juneteenth 2021, KBLA Talk 1580 launched with a promise to give disenfranchised fellow citizens a voice in current political, economic, social, and cultural issues with an empowering, sustainable, and restorative language.
Everybody's got a little light under the sun, under the sun, under the sun.
As we enter our third year, we are delighted that KBLA Talk 1580 consistently emerges as the talk station of choice for African American listeners. In a vigorous public opinion research study, the 2023 African American Media Issue Survey finds that for the second consecutive year, KBLA Talk 1580 remains the most trusted, credible, and reliable media source in Southern California for African Americans and beyond. Furthermore, 80% of those surveyed agree that outlets like KBLA Talk 1580 provide honest and authentic content about the issues most important to the Black community directly from Black journalists who understand the issues that need to be addressed. At KBLA Talk 1580, we remain committed to curating conversations that matter to you. Thank you for your continued support. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. The station that sounds like the city looks. The city looks.
It sounds so good to me. You gotta get on up, baby. You gotta get on up now. Say it again, you're to say, get on up. Gotta get on. You gotta get on.
I'm Tavis Smiley. This is KBLA Talk 1580. Our phone number 1-800-920-1580, 1-800-920-1580. I'm sure you all saw the story recently where the lawsuit filed by the last 3 known survivors of the Tulsa race massacre was dismissed. It was hard to process how a case of that import, a case that we've talked about ad infinitum, ad nauseum, with these 3 survivors, I think all 3 basically 100 years of age or more, but just 3 people left from those horrific Tulsa race riots, the race massacre. this case, again, dismissed by a judge in Oklahoma. It was, for me at least, I'm not sure about you, a stark reminder of the ongoing struggle for justice and reparations faced by marginalized communities like ours. The black community, of course, is still grappling with this reparations fight. We will see what happens here in California and how the nation proceeds after we see what happens here in California. And so in this hour, we're having a conversation that weaves together personal narratives and collective histories. I hope a conversation that will shed light then on the enduring legacies of racial injustice in this country. Please be joined by journalist and author Donna Bryson, whose personal journey and reflections intersect with the broader narrative of racial injustice. Let me tell you a bit about Donna and why I wanted to have her on. In a recent Reuters feature story written by Donna, she explored her family's history in rural Georgia, unearthing the painful realities of America's racist past. Through her personal exploration, she not only confronted her own ancestral connections, but also contemplated how our nation can learn from its history rather than shy away from it. We'll spend most of our hour talking then about this powerful piece that Donna authored for Reuters. She also works at Reuters, and she was the co-author of this piece. You might have seen, everybody, I must have got this thing, it's being passed around like candy. I got this thing from 20 different people. People kept texting it to me. So you probably saw the story that she co-authored that shows that many of America's political elite, including presidents, Supreme Court justices, governors, and legislators, descend from ancestors who enslaved people. The chart, the graph, the photos of who these persons are was arresting by itself. So Donna is also the co-author of that piece. So a lot to talk about in this hour. Glad I got a whole hour for Donna Bryson, who I welcome to the airways of KBLA Talk 1580 right now. Donna, good to have you on. How are you today?
I'm well, and thank you so much for inviting me.
Glad to have you on. Sorry for that long introduction, but you've been doing a lot lately, and I wanted to kind of get it all out and let folk know who you were and why I wanted to have you on. We'll get to that, again, provocative piece about these elite who are the descendants of enslavers. Fascinating story. We'll unpack that, I promise. But I want to start with the story that you wrote for Reuters about your own family. And the title of that story is All We Are Is Memory. All We Are Is Memory. I don't want to color the first question too much, pardon the pun, but I want to just give you a chance to sort of set the stage, to set the table for why you wrote this article, and we'll jump from there.
All right. Well, it started this whole process as part of the bigger project, the story you mentioned that everyone has been texting you. I'm happy to hear that. And that was an article looking at personal ties to slavery. And as part of that whole project, I was asked to write about how we teach about slavery and other hard history. And it just seemed to make sense to talk about personal ties, too, since that was kind of the overarching theme of our project. And I thought back to stories I'd heard growing up, when my father would talk about his family and also some of the racist violence our family has faced. I would overhear this as I thought. I think a lot of people probably share that experience of listening in on adults talking about these hard histories. And I decided to try to put some of the research experience I had learned while researching the histories of some of the notables to my own family, and found it quite revealing.
How much of this story about your own family that you found quite revealing when you got into it did you know prior to commencing the research?
Oh, I knew it. It's something, as I say, listening to my father and the elders discuss as I was a child. I told him at one point while I was working with the story, because he would raise these topics with other African-American families, and I drew the conclusion that every African-American family had these kinds of stories, that it was the norm.
Yeah. All right. So when we come forward, we'll commence our conversation with Donna about what she actually found out. As you heard her say a moment ago, she knew some of this based on what her father was sharing with her when she was a kid, just kind of eavesdropping. But now she's a grown woman, and she is getting involved in her own research to learn more about her personal narrative. And we'll hear about that personal narrative when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about. Good thing we've got 3 hours. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
At Lowe's, we're always bringing pros more ways to save. Right now, save $50 when you buy the Tank 6-gallon pancake air compressor from Metabo HPT for just $199. Plus, get up to 20% off select James Hardie siding. Shop in-store or online for more deals you can't beat. Because Lowe's knows savings, Lowe's knows pros. Metabo HPT offer valid 7/6 through 7/26. James Hardie offer valid 7/13 through 7/19. Selection varies by location while supplies last.
With no fees or minimums and no overdraft fees, banking with Capital One is the easiest decision in the history of decisions. Kind of like choosing Derek Jeter as the pinch hitter for your baseball team.
Jeter, you're in. We need a home run.
I'll give it a try. I've swung a bat once or twice.
That's out of here.
Yep, even easier than that. With no fees or minimums and no overdraft fees, is it even a decision? That's banking reimagined. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com/bank for details. Capital One NA, member FDIC.
Girl, I have a secret. When I get stressed out, I get sweaty. That's why I use Secret Clinical Antiperspirant. It's like my own secret weapon. For 72 hours, I get Secret's strongest protection against sweat caused by stress, heat, and activity, because you know how crazy life can get. Plus, it's made with advanced odor fighters that don't just cover up smelliness. They help prevent it from happening in the first place. Believe me, if I weren't wearing Secret, I'd be a hot, smelly mess. Thankfully, Secret works.
Are you working way too hard for way too little? There's never been a better time to consider a career in IT. You could enjoy a recession-resistant career in a rewarding field with plenty of growth opportunities and often flexible work environments. Go to mycomputercareer.edu and take the free career evaluation. You can start your new career in months, not years. Take classes online or on campus, and financial aid is available to qualified students, including the GI Bill. Now's the time. Go to mycomputercareer.edu.
I think a little something like this.
Hey, it is me, D.L. Hughley, and I am thrilled to be heard weekdays in my hometown on KBLA Talk 1580. So check out the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show weekdays from 2 to 4 p.m. exclusively on KBLA Talk 1580. We got a whole lot to talk about, let me tell you.
That's on the real. Conversations that matter. You're listening to Tavis Smiley on KBLA Talk 1580.
You are listening to Tavis Smiley and Donna Bryson on KBLA Talk 1580. She has authored a powerful piece for Reuters called All We Are Is Memory. She just answered my question as to how and why she got into writing this story. And now I'm going to ask Donna to sort of unpack what she learned when she got into research. I said we got some time. So, Donna, tell me what you figured out.
I like the way you put that before the break about eavesdropping. I think that's what way a lot of the younger people learn about their history, eavesdropping on the elders, and a lot of journalists, I guess, grow up to continue to be eavesdroppers. but you do have to do a little bit more of, I guess, trying to document if you're going to move from family history and oral history to writing a story. And I said about it in much the same way we said about, as I said earlier, researching genealogies of notable Americans, looking for census reports, looking for newspaper articles, looking for memoir. And there were some gaps. You won't be surprised to hear, I'm sure. We can go back to every census until we get to the census of 1860 and 1850, which are accompanied by slave schedules, and those schedules have no name. They have age ranges sometimes specific ages of African Americans who were enslaved, race, I guess I would say color, whether they were male or female, and an idea of their age, and that was it. It can feel like a wall you reach if you're an African American researching family. I think like a lot of people during the pandemic sent off a saliva test to one of these genealogy companies, and I got back a family tree that had names, some names I had heard from my father, of course, but it only went back as far as 1834, the year my father's great-grandfather was born, presumably in slavery. But even that I was not able to document beyond that, just the presumption given the year of his birth. And so there was that document. There were documents about my grandfather who had served in World War II. He was able to find his name on the ship registry of returning troops, which was delightful for me to see. It had explained that he was in the Quartermaster's Corps, and I had seen his gravestone. He has a gravestone like you would see at any military cemetery, though this is in a small cemetery in a small town in Florida. And it's been weathered with age, and I was never able to make out those three initials after his name, and now I know it's Quartermaster's Corps, QMC.
Mm-hmm.
So those are things I was able to put my hands on and to document, but there were other things I was not able to document. My father's grandfather was lynched. He was tarred and feathered. Of the stories that my father heard, he never met his grandfather. He was told that his grandfather was lynched before he was born. The death certificate I was able to find puts it maybe a year after my father was born, but my father was a baby, so we didn't necessarily know all those details. This would have been his grandfather, so my great-grandfather, who was a craftsman, a brick mason. He was a mechanic. My father was told that he had a little garage near the house in Commerce, Georgia, and he was a merchant. He had a store. His name was General Bryson, and he had a store that was called General Store. As my dad says, that it was a general store. It sold all kinds of things.
Yeah, you'd be a lot better off if it were the general store that we know today.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I digress. Go ahead.
Exactly, and even that was hard to find in census records. Census records didn't refer to him as being a shopkeeper, but did find a map of Commerce, Georgia from that period that shows the house and the building next door that's in the garage, and the building that seems to be labeled a shop. So there's that too that they can put your hands on. My father was told that it was possible that General's success as a merchant was upsetting to white supremacists in town, and that he was pulled from his store and tarred and feathered and died as a result of that attack.
There are a couple. I'm sorry. Go ahead and finish your point. Finish that point, and I want to ask you something. Go ahead.
I was just saying, but the death certificate I was able to find does not refer to those kinds of injuries. It says he died of heart failure. I looked at that with my dad, and my dad kind of scoffed at that. It's just not true.
Yeah. You said a few things now that I want to sort of unpack and give you a chance to unpack in this conversation. We'll talk about the lynching here in just a second. It is for many of us, common knowledge that there were lynchings that happened every day in this country. So nothing new about that. It's quite another thing to discover that your grandfather, that your father's grandfather was lynched. That's a big deal. And I want to ask Donna a couple questions about this lynching in just a second here. But before I do that, I want to go further back into her story about the delight that she said she felt when she discovered that one of her ancestors was one of the troops. Tell me more about that, Donna. I'm specifically interested about your use of the word delighted. What made you so delighted when you learned about your ancestor being one of the troops?
Well, it was documents that connected stories my father had told. My father talked a lot about his father having served in World War I and having served in Europe, and stories about him coming back. And he learned French while he was in Europe. And my grandmother learned French from school. And my dad would say that the two of them would speak French when they didn't want my dad and his brother to know what they were talking about. So these are
yeah.
Connecting a family story to looking at these documents. He was one of many people on that ship coming back from France. And here was a kind of a document that underlined a family story, a historical document. underlying the family story.
Yeah, not too often that we hear black folk in that era talking French in front of their black kids to make sure that they couldn't understand what they were saying. It's a delightful story, and I'm glad you shared it. Let me move to this other issue that you raised, that you discovered in your research about the lynching. As I said a moment ago, we all know our history with regard to lynchings, and these lynchings were happening literally every day, multiple times a day in this country. So nothing new there. But it seems to me that it is something altogether different when you do the research and get more detail about a family member who was in fact lynched. And then you find the death certificate and it says heart failure. Technically, we all die of heart failure. No matter what you have, you die when your heart stops beating. So I guess technically it is true, but it is a lie, obviously. He was lynched. But just tell me more emotionally how you processed learning and getting more detail about a lynching in your own family. Not that far back, frankly.
Not that far back, exactly. And I should stress that it wasn't a new story to me. I had grown up listening to this story, listening to other African-American families, as you point out, share these kinds of stories. What was new for me was trying to document it. And I guess in a way, distressing to see how difficult that can be. You're probably aware of the work they've done to put together the Museum of Lynching, the Memorial of Lynching. And that involved many, many researchers trying to pin down details. And then there's a new book just last year, Margaret Burnham's Hands Now Known, which also is an attempt. She's a university professor. She has grad students to help her do the research, and she was able to document many, until then, undocumented lynchings, but she wasn't able to pin down everything. She opens the book with one that she wasn't able to pin down, and that was very interesting to me because I'm working on pinning down a lynching, and I wasn't able to pin it down. Mm-hmm. As she says, the lynching she opens her book with, there was, reporters at the time must have decided it wasn't worth reporting in the white newspapers, and maybe nobody went to the police, or certainly nobody opened a case. And I kind of followed her lead into the NAACP archives, where you can see attempts to document. The NAACP includes newspaper articles about lynchings, but it also, looking through the archives, you can hear, in a way, I feel like I could hear it, but it was letters and memos among NAACP officials just expressing the difficulties, the fear of witnesses, and the difficulties of even in real time documenting these murders and these atrocities. And of course, I'm coming back many years after the fact, trying to document and running into the same problems. One of the things I did was go to Commerce, my father's hometown in Georgia, and sit down at the microfiche machine, the reader in the library, and just start going through the newspaper from that time. Spent all day. I went on a day when the library opened early and closed late. So I was there almost 12 hours, a little bit of time for lunch.
Yeah. Couple questions here. One, is there, even though you knew some of this stuff, is there, I'm trying to find the right word, you tell me, because I wasn't there, obviously. Is there an anxiousness? Is there an anxiety? Is there an anticipation? When you're spending that much time researching your family history for this story for Reuters, you tell me, what's the feeling? What's the emotion?
It's interesting you should ask, because there's two things. There's one, as a reporter, I want to find the documents, right? Mm-hmm. and when I'm not, there's an anxiety. But also, the reading I had done in Burnham's book and in the NAACP archives, it's agonizing to read details of these deaths and these attacks. And so, do I want to read those kind of details about relatives? I don't know, because I didn't get a chance. I don't know how I would have reacted if I'd had the chance to see it in black and white that way. Mm-hmm. But so there's a lot of things going on.
Yep. When you learn more about your own family history, What impact does that have on the life that you're living today? I'm just curious as to how it impacts you when you learn what you discovered in your research process.
You know, we were talking earlier about the eavesdropping, and my father now lives in San Diego, and I flew to San Diego to sit down and interview him, as a reporter does. It's very difficult to interview a family member about things that family member knows you know. Mm-hmm. You have to get them to repeat stories, but you know, he was willing to sit down, and I made sure that my child came with me, become part of that chain of eavesdropping, I suppose. Mm-hmm. My child's name is Tanvi, and Tanvi helped me by recording on my iPhone that conversation, listening and recording, but at one point intervening to say, Mom, I had told my dad that I had grown up hearing these things, but we'd never had a one-on-one conversation about it in that way. And Tanya says, but Mom, you've never had that kind of conversation with me. You know, she's kind of calling me on it. And I have to think about why I wanted it to be oblique in a way, because they are hard conversations. I think almost easier to overhear. But Tanti said, knowing them can help us prepare to hear about hard history later. When we get to school, if we know these stories, they're not going to be so shocking or so surprising. We're going to be able to talk about them.
I wonder, Donna, if you felt to your point now, I wonder if you felt an added pressure, not just one because you were being called out by your child for not sharing with you stories that you eavesdropped on when you were a youngster. That's enough pressure in and of itself to get called out by your baby. But on top of that, when your child suggests to you that hearing these stories now makes it easier when they get to a certain point in school and learn of these things, well, you and I both know they don't learn of these things in school. That's what this whole fight about that we're having right now about book bans and teaching the truth. They're not going to learn this stuff in schools. I wonder if you felt an additional pressure, not just being called out about it, but the fact that you know that if you don't share these stories broadly, say nothing of your own personal family history, your child will never learn of this stuff.
Yes, you are right. The debate over history and over what might upset someone to hear, it's new, I guess, but it's also in a long line of sugarcoating slavery and lying about slavery in our textbooks, in our media, and I think part of the reason it's become so contentious now is that is ending. I think we have an archive of the truth that is being spread and becoming known. I talked earlier about Margaret Burnham's book. I talked about the Lynching Museum. All of these antebellum homes, these gracious homes that were built by slaves. At one time, people would go and have weddings there. But now, more and more, you can go to these homes and learn about the lives of the African Americans who toiled there. So it's harder and harder to lie. And I think that's why it's become so contentious.
Yeah. There's the backstory, at least some of it, as much as I can get to, about Donna's family and what she learned in researching her own personal narrative. When we come forward after news, traffic, and sports, I want to get to the other part of this story, and that is what she did, bringing to the attention of the nation the political elite, presidents, Supreme Court justices, governors, legislators, and others who have descended from ancestors who were, in fact, in slavery. That story, again, all over social media. She co-authored that piece. We'll talk about that part, as we say, that part, when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
The station you turn to when you've had it up to here with cultural incompetence. KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Michigan's Attorney General says that she's filed charges against 16 people who signed paperwork falsely claiming former President Donald Trump won the 2020 election. Attorney General Dana Nessel said the group allegedly met in the basement of the state Republican Party headquarters to sign the papers. The news came the same day Trump said that he was informed that he was the target of an investigation into the January 6th riot and efforts to overturn the 2020 presidential election. In North Carolina, Charlotte Black Pride events are continuing this week in the Queen City. Today features a town hall on Black Renaissance and film at Johnson C. Smith University. Anyone looking for information on events for the rest of the week can visit charlotteblackpride.org. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
We have a wreck working on the 110 Harbor Freeway northbound at Manchester Avenue with your left lane blocked. Traffic is backed up from the 105. Stays busy on that drive up to the 4 level. Mid-City area, 10 westbound Santa Monica Freeway. Very heavy this morning coming off the 110 out to National Boulevard. And on the eastbound side, you've got delays from Arlington Avenue to the 110.
Prime members save more at your Amazon Fresh store. As a Prime member, you'll save 10% on hundreds of items in store, from organic produce to pantry staples to handcrafted pizza. Head to Amazon.com/fresh locations and find a store near you.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Philadelphia 76ers general manager Daryl Morey confirmed that James Harden really does want to be traded. Harden is asking Morey to do a deal that sends him to the Clippers. At the moment, there is no other team the seven-time All-Star wants to play for if he can get out of Philly. Morey admitted he's trying to work something out for Harden and the Clippers, but only at the right price. He said he won't trade Harden to the Clippers or any other team unless the trade keeps the Sixers in contention for a title. Kawhi Leonard and Paul George are off limits, plus the Clippers don't have any first-round draft picks until 2027. If the Clippers can put something on the table that impresses Morey, Harden will be in the Clippers uniform next season. The Dodgers keep rolling. They win by 7 in Baltimore, a 3-run homer for Jason Hayward. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
MC Light for AARP. Hip-hop has evolved since it hit the scene in 1973. The genre started a movement of self-expression, giving a voice to artists like me. This year, hip-hop celebrates its 50th anniversary. Check out the June-July issue of AARP, the magazine, dedicated to hip-hop music, fashion, and culture that took over the world, and fun facts that'll take you back. Visit aarp.org/Black Community to learn more.
Community is more than where you live. It's the people in it who go above and beyond to help it thrive. During the 50th anniversary of hip-hop and the 75th anniversary of Black radio, AARP recognizes the members, volunteers, people, and partners giving back to our communities. We believe when our efforts drive change for the greater good, we all thrive together. To learn more about how AARP supports efforts to keep our communities thriving, visit aarp.org/Black Community.
You're ready to level up to your next home or your first home, but maybe you still have some questions. Come check out Rocket. We're ready to help. Start with a Rocket Mortgage home buying plan and get Rocket rewards along the way for cash toward closing. You got this, and Rocket's got you. Only with Rocket. Visit rocketbuyingplan.com to get started today.
Call 866-357-5727 for conditions and restrictions. Equal housing lender licensed in all 50 states. NMLS Consumer Access.org, number 3030.
Hosting a barbecue is a breeze, but managing my frequent heartburn, that was a lot more work. I would chew up to 10 antacids in one day. Now I take just one Prilosec OTC, and my heartburn is blocked for a full 24 hours. Just one Prilosec OTC a day gives me one-and-done heartburn relief, so I can go back for seconds on my world-famous burgers.
Prilosec OTC. One pill a day, 24 hours, zero heartburn. It's possible while taking Prilosec OTC. Use as directed for 14 days to treat frequent heartburn, not for immediate relief.
Wendy's is open till midnight or later, so you can give in to the craving and go night mode. Now all of your favorite menu items just got their bedtime extended. You can get what you want even later, like the Baconator with 6 strips of bacon, or the perfect fries and Frosty Duo. If you're up later, then so are we. So go ahead and pull through the drive-thru. When the craving hits, go night mode at Wendy's. Open till midnight or later. All right, see ya later.
At participating U.S. Wendy's, hours may vary.
At Charmin, we heard you shouldn't talk about going to the bathroom in public, so we decided to sing about it.
Roll Charmin ultra strong when you drop in the beat. It cleans with way less effort on your seat. Yeah, roll it, drop it. Yeah, roll it, yeah, drop it. Okay. Charmin flows extra strong from the road. Your butt hella clean while you're sitting on the bowl. Yeah, it's all you need for that bathroom groove. Get you in and out without nothing to prove.
Charmin Ultra Strong cleans better so you can use less. Enjoy the go with Charmin.
Heard any other talk radio lately that sounds anything like this? Didn't think so. You're listening to Unapologetically Progressive, KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Tavis Smiley. Our guest in this hour is Donna Bryson, who is at Reuters, and she wrote a powerful piece for Reuters called All We Are Is Memory. The other piece that she was a part of, I'm going to get to here in just a second. Let me close with one final question about that personal story that you wrote, All We Are Is Memory. I think I get it, having read the piece, but why that title, Donna?
It is something that Tandy said to me as we were talking about the meaning of the story. And it resonates with some of the other people I spoke to for the story, including a professor in South Africa who has talked with students who come to him. He's an African-American professor. He was head of a university that had white and black students right after apartheid ended, and he taught a course on South Africa's, hard history, and he would often find students, particularly white students, who found this agonizing, wanted to, as they would say, put the past behind them. And he would tell them, we've tried that and it doesn't work. It just keeps coming up. It keeps coming up because all we are is memory.
Mm-hmm. No, it's a powerful phrase, and it jumps out at you when you see it in print. That said, let me move now to the other story that I was anxious to get to. And this is the story that you co-wrote. Again, for those who may have just tuned in, Donna Bryson is our guest. She works at Reuters, and beyond this piece that she wrote about her own personal family history, called All We Are Is Memory, she was part of the team that wrote this story that shows that many of America's political elite, including presidents, Supreme Court justices, governors, and legislators, descend from ancestors who were enslavers. And I think I want to start with this, Donna. What was fascinating for me about that story, and many people have seen it, and again, as I said earlier, the graph, the photographs that accompany the story of these elite, and drawing lines to the enslavers in their families. It was arresting. It was hard to sort of turn away when you see it. You recognize all these faces, and you start reading to see, okay, whose family had enslavers in it, and you want to know the backstory. So the photos made it undeniable when you see who these persons are in our body politic today, knowing that they descend from enslavers. So it's hard to turn away. The part that got me, though, was that it was so fascinating even for me to want to read and dig into, even though I couldn't have been surprised. I mean, this is America. So I couldn't have been surprised that many of these persons would have been descendants of families who enslaved, and yet it was impossible not to want to read it, not to want to dig into it. What do you make of that irony?
I think what we did was make it personal, which makes it real in a way that history is not always for people. Mm-hmm. You say it's hard to turn away, and when it's your family, it's hard to turn away. Yeah, mm-hmm. and it also, I think, it brings to clarity how close this era was. One of the historians we spoke to for this story says, not simply that it was just a few generations away, but that it was a few conversations away, which really resonated with me because I think of journalism as being about informing conversations, sparking conversations, and it really just felt that it felt real after going through this exercise for us, and I'm interested to hear that as a reader, it also made it feel real to you.
Yeah. I'm going to put you on the spot and have you pull out a few people There are many that were featured in the story, and I'm going to ask you to pull out a few of them and just kind of give the audience a taste of what you all laid out in the piece. Again, there are many people who are featured here. But it was, again, just sort of arresting to see the photos of these people and to learn more about their personal backstories. So let's walk through a few. I'll let you choose who you want to choose, but a few of the persons who made the list, including, as I said, presidents and Supreme Court justices, governors, legislators, all well-known Americans who are the descendants of enslavers. So Donna, pick out a few. And let's walk through them.
Well, the biggest pool we were looking at were the members of the last sitting Congress, not the current sitting Congress, because this turned out to take a lot of time. We weren't able to finish before the last election. So 100 members of that last sitting Congress, and that's Republicans like Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham, Democrats such as Elizabeth Warren and Tammy Duckworth, every living president except Donald Trump, whose ancestors came from abroad after the period of slavery, 11 governors in 2022, including Asa Hutchinson from Arkansas and Doug Burgum from North Dakota, and 2 of the 9 sitting Supreme Court justices, Amy Coney Barrett and Neil Gorsuch.
Mm-hmm. The fascinating thing that many people were commenting on is that Donald Trump, as you mentioned, is not in a family where he descends from enslavers, but Barack Obama is. So
from his mother's side.
From his mother's side, yeah. So what kind of response did you get to that reality that Donald Trump is not and Barack Obama is?
Well, I think it underlines that this doesn't say anything. We're not putting personal responsibility on anyone, but we are saying that that there is a connection between the past and the present. And the question is, what do people make of it? Very few of the people we identified wanted to talk to us about it, but among those that did was Julia Brownlee. She's a Democrat from California, but she's from Virginia. And when I spoke to her, she said she did not know this about her ancestors, but she was not surprised, which I think might be true for lots of people. People don't want to know, so they don't dig into it too much. But she grew up in Virginia. As she says, when her small town desegregated, her parents took her out of the public schools and sent her to one of those, segregationist schools. When she got to college, got to a more integrated atmosphere, and she realized that she had been miseducated by being taken out of the public schools and taken away from, I guess, a confrontation with America as a multicultural society. And she talks about wanting to talk about her own evolution, and knowing this about her ancestors helps her talk about it.
I'm not surprised that a majority of these folk did not want to talk to you. I wouldn't want to talk to you either if I were one of these good white folk, and you sort of outed me and exposed me for being a descendant of a family with enslavers. And again, I wouldn't want to talk to you either. Which leads me to ask, why do a story like this? I mean, for those who read this story as sort of outing these people and embarrassing these people, how would Reuters respond to that?
Well, at the beginning, when we were talking about this story, I said this is not a gotcha game, because I didn't want to play a gotcha game. Mm-hmm. And I firmly believe it's not. It's an exercise in education, an exercise in reminding Americans that the past is not that past, and in looking at notables who are making policy that in a lot of ways is touched by the past. I don't know how often we hear about the 14th Amendment. Mm-hmm. Just heard about it a lot in the affirmative action decisions. And that's the amendment that ended slavery, and it still shapes, the who is an American and what rights do Americans have. It's from a period that a lot of people refer to as the second founding, and we pay a lot of attention to the first founding. Somehow easier to talk about throwing off the shackles of British rule, but we can also learn from the second founding, when African Americans were able to throw off the shackles of racist chattel slavery in this country.
As I said, the story was sent to me countless times by people all across the country who wanted to make sure that I saw it. Indeed, I did repeatedly. When we come forward, Donna Bryson, I'm curious as to the kind of response that Reuters got, the kind of response that she and the team of writers and editors, what they hear when they push this story out, letting us know that these presidents and Supreme Court justices and governors and others are descendants of ancestors who enslaved people. What did they hear? I want to hear about that when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Be sure to like and follow Tavis Smiley at The Real Tavis Smiley and get Twitter updates at Tavis Smiley. The conversation continues when we come forward.
You're listening to K-Drip, where we play all the best classic water-wasting hits like Sprinklers in the Rain and Leaky Faucets. They're tunes from another time because now that we face a hotter, drier future, every drop counts. Despite an extremely wet winter, keep using less water, fixing leaks, and reusing indoor water for your garden. Visit SaveOurWater.com for more ways to conserve. Up next, brushing your teeth with the water on. K-Drip.
Hollywood Walk of Fame stars in 2024. Stay tuned to find out who's in next year's class. I'm Aisha Cairo with your K-Black Minute News. A new group of 31 entertainment professionals across film, television, radio, recording, and sports entertainment will have their names etched into Hollywood's history in 2024. One of the most celebrated names on the list was the beloved Chadwick Boseman. Others for the class of 2024 in Hollywood Walk of Fame was this year's Oscar winner Michelle Yeoh in the motion picture category. Other notable names include Chris Pine, Gwen Stefani, Andre, Dr. Dre, Young, Otis Redding, Christina Ricci, Brandy Norwood, Harry Washington, and more. The dates for the star ceremonies have not yet been scheduled. To find out all 31 inductees, visit youtube.com/Walk of Fame.
Don't settle for bumps, ingrowns, and itch due to dry skin. Venus for Pubic Hair and Skin is here with the only razor and regimen specifically designed for your pubic area, featuring a razor with a patented irritation defense bar and skincare regimen that is dermatologist and gynecologist tested. Venus helps protect your pubic skin from shave irritation. Visit GilletteVenus.com to learn more about our full regimen of products.
Whether you own a local business or a global one, you know that these days, generating growth is a challenge. By teaming with Bank of America, you'll not just stay ahead of the curve, you'll move it. With access to experts, award-winning insights, and business solutions so powerful, you'll make every move matter, locally and globally. Visit bankofamerica.com/banking for business to learn more. What would you like the power to do? Copyright 2023 Bank of America, N.A.
This is KBLA Talk 1580, where hate loses and love wins.
Donna Bryson, you mentioned earlier that many of the persons whose genealogies you all dug into at Reuters, these notable Americans whose, again, genealogies you unearthed, did not want to talk to you for the story. No surprise there. But I'm curious as to what kind of response you and the writers and editors and Reuters heard from everyday people when this story was released.
Some of the response echoes a little bit what you were just saying, that we were seen as outing these notable people. I disagree with that, but we definitely heard it. We also heard from people who understood that what we did tells us more about America. Mm-hmm. And there's news in that. There's news in the history. One of the people I spoke to after the story was published was more in response to a timeline on reparations that I had prepared. And my timeline begins with a woman named Belinda Sutton, who managed to successfully sue for a pension after she had been enslaved in Massachusetts in the 1700s. I spoke to a woman named Kira Singleton who runs the Royal House and Slave Quarters, a museum in Massachusetts, and who points out that Belinda won in court, but had to keep going back to court to get what the court had said she was owed, and these stories of persistence, and I guess the arc of history is sometimes quite slow, maybe doesn't even always lead to justice, but to have these kinds of stories highlighted, I think is important to a lot of readers.
This is not a question that you can, I want to frame this the right way. I admit it's not a question specifically for you. It's a question for those persons who are featured in this story that you helped to write. But I am curious as to your take on the question, and that is the following. Whether or not you think, we think, that these histories, these hard histories, as you put it earlier, about these persons featured in your story, ought to inform the way they govern, the way they show up in the world.
I don't know whether it ought to, but I think it does. In people's
you think
lives.
You think it does?
I do think. I mean, one of the things we also did for this project was a survey, and we found that people who knew that they had slave-owning ancestors were, for example, more likely to support reparations. I'm not saying that ought to be the way, but it certainly seems to have some impact on people's thinking about themselves and their country and the future.
Yeah.
Knowing the past informs how we think about the future.
Yeah, I asked that question because, and I asked because it does not seem to me that Amy Coney Barrett, for example, is governed by knowing that she has enslavers in her past. It has done nothing to cause her to retrench on the kinds of votes that she's casting as a Supreme Court justice. And so I hear your point. Maybe the word ought is the wrong word. I'm happy to hear the data that suggests that persons who find out that they are descendants of families that had enslavers in it are more likely to support reparations. That's a good thing, but doesn't seem to work for Supreme Court justices or certain elected officials like Mitch McConnell, but I digress on that point. Our remaining moments with Donna Bryson when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Say the quiet part out loud. KBLA Talk 1580.
I just discovered the best back-to-school hack, shopping at Kohl's. With the extra 15% off right now, I found new school style for old school prices, like tees for under $7 that'll be so perfect for both recess and weekend fun. Then I picked up a few statement pieces, including a cool backpack that my son is so excited about. And up next, the best school year yet. All thanks to Kohl's. Select styles. Offers end July 23rd. Some exclusions apply. See store or Kohl's.com for details.
Some people won't give you the real talk on drugs, but it's time we know the facts. Fentanyl is killing people. It's a powerful opioid, often made illegally and commonly mixed with illicit drugs. It can even be pressed into counterfeit pills that resemble prescription medications. Just 2 milligrams, about the size of a few grains of sand, can potentially be lethal. This isn't an ad to scare you, but it is an ad to make you think twice. Get the facts. Go to realdealonfentanyl.com. This message is brought to you by the Ad Council.
If this were a Reese's TV ad, you'd be staring at a Reese's peanut butter cup. And sure, my voice is peanut buttery smooth, but still, you need to see the peanut butter cups, right? No? I can really just say Reese's and you'll go get some? Okay. Reese's. 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 Really working, actually. Reese's. Reese's. I'm on to something. Reese's. Reese's. Reese's.
Ew, gotta get rid of this old Backstreet Boys t-shirt.
Tell me why.
Because it stinks, boys.
Tell me why.
I've washed it so many times, but the odor won't come out.
Tell me why.
No, you tell me why I can't get rid of this odor.
Have you tried new Downy Rinse and Refresh? It doesn't just cover up odors, it helps remove them.
Wow, it worked, guys.
Yeah.
Downy Rinse and Refresh removes more odor in one wash than the leading value detergent in 3 washes. Find it wherever you buy laundry products.
What's up, LA? The Reparationist community got something real special going down in historic Leimert Park. August 12th, 2023. This event is sponsored by Reparations United and Black Pact, fighting for justice and empowering our community. Together, we can make moves. We have an insane lineup for y'all. The sultry Rotimi, the king of LA, The Game, Smooth Eric Benet, and none other than the powerful sounds of Blackness. Also, we have some special guests in the house. Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, State Senator Stephen Bradford, LA's beloved Councilwoman Heather Hutt, and many more. They're bringing their passion and leadership to the stage. Mark your calendars, August 12th, 2023, Lamert Park. Let's come together, support each other, and make a difference. Peace, love, and reparations benefit concert and unity rally. Be there or be left out. Produced by Tara Perry of Black Pact and Cam Howard of Reparations United.
Interrogating your assumptions and expanding your inventory of ideas. Let's get back to Tavis Smiley on KBLA Talk 1580.
So, Donna, I'm just got about 3 minutes left, 3.5 minutes left in this conversation. We've talked about two major stories that you were connected to. One, of course, about your own personal journey called All We Are Is Memory. The other, of course, this story about these notable Americans who come from families that had enslavers. I want to take them one at a time just to wrap our conversation. For you personally, what was the takeaway from your story, All We Are Is Memory?
I'd go back to Tandy, who underlined the importance of being aware of your surroundings, I suppose, and that includes your historical surroundings. As a parent, I feel like I can be more forthright, and I understand the importance of that now. For the larger story, I'm glad we had this opportunity to educate. It's an important tenet of journalism, and would point out to listeners that the project includes some guides to how you might go about doing your own historical ancestral research. So have a look on Reuters.com, REUTERS.com, and look up the materials.
Given that you have had the experience now of doing what you just suggested, others can find information about how to do. Is it something that you recommend to other, particularly African Americans, to do?
Absolutely. I came away from this whole project understanding America better, understanding my family better, and that I think can lead to understanding yourself better.
Mm-hmm. And I'm asking you now, just as a writer, as a reporter, given the connection that this story about, again, the genealogy of these prominent Americans, given the impact of that story, I'm curious as to, again, as a reporter, how you see the conversation the country is or is not having, depending on your perspective, around the issue of reparations. This station, KBLA, is heard across the country. We're flagshipped in LA, as you may know. And so here in California, we are sort of leading the nation on this reparations dialogue, and we will see what the California legislature ultimately does now that it's in their hands to decide how and whether and if we define reparations in a particular way. But what's your sense, given the story that you, again, were connected to, what's your sense of how the country is having or not having the reparations conversation writ large?
It's having it more and more, and it's interesting to me. Several people I interviewed for the story about my family, we talked about the South African Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which I covered as a reporter. I covered the opening sessions. And that was, at heart, a truth-telling, a national truth-telling in a way, trying to get everyone on the same page. And I see the reparations conversation as being very similar. I think when we look at what's been proposed in D.C., it is simply, let's have a study, let's have a conversation. And it's a start. I don't know where it will lead, but it seems like an important start.
Yeah, the one irony of the TRC that you just raised, Truth and Reconciliation Commission South Africa, is, you know, because you covered it, as did I, that people were given the chance to come forward and to confess. And once it's on the record, it's there. And that is your punishment, essentially. You have to come forward and tell the truth in front of this commission, and essentially you're allowed to go on with your life, but you got to come forward in this moment and tell the truth. With regard to your story, you got all these folk who didn't want to talk to Reuters, didn't want to address the truth. I can't imagine America having anything like a TRC, at least in that regard, where we give opportunities for Americans to come forward and tell the truth, and they actually take those opportunities. Can you imagine that? I couldn't. I can't.
I think there were probably South Africans who couldn't imagine that the TRC would happen.
Yeah.
And I think that an acknowledgement is deeper than we realize.
Yeah, all right, fair enough. I take your point. Donna Bryson is her name. She's with Reuters. Again, her story of the research into her own family is called "All We Are Is Memory." And of course, I ain't got to tell you about the other story. You've seen it everywhere about these lawmakers and beyond who are descendants of families that had enslavers in it. We'll leave it there. Donna Bryson, thanks for your work and witness. Good to have you on. All the best to you.
Thank you so much.
In our third hour, in our final hour today, Marianne Williamson, Democratic presidential candidate, joins us live in studio at KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. In Illinois, more details are being revealed about the investigation into allegations of Chicago police sexual misconduct involving migrants. Leaders of the civilian of 60 days. Critics say the move will leave residents less safe as suspects will